Welcome to the 19th Annual Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge Kickoff presented by Land Title Guarantee Company. My name is Kathy Barsner. I'm NAIOP Colorado's Executive Director. So happy to see all of you here today to get our 19th Annual Challenge kicked off. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce Tyler Carlson, who is NAIOP Colorado's 2021 Chapter President, and he is the Managing Principal with Evergreen Development. Welcome, Tyler.
Thank you, Kathy, and welcome everyone, and thank you for participating in this afternoon's 2021 Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge featuring Dow Junction, which is being sponsored by the Town of Minturn and Land Title Guarantee Company. And we're grateful for both of their sponsorships and their support of this year's competition between the grad students at CU and DU. This year is especially exciting because it's the first year that we have taken the competition out of the Front Range and up to the mountains, and our students' teams have the opportunity to analyze a site that's got some unique characteristics that they've never had to face before. So I'm personally really excited to see what they come up with. I've been a judge in the past, and it's really exciting to see the creativity that comes out of these teams and all the blood, sweat, and tears that they put into it. So may the best team win. And with that, I want to turn the time over to Cooper Williams, who is our 2021 Challenge Chair and who is also a president with Essex Financial Group.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler, and welcome everybody. I'm Cooper Williams from Essex Financial Group. I'm also the 2021 Chair of the Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge. And we'd like to welcome everybody today and thank you again for your participation. This is the 19th year that and NAIOP has put on this program and challenge. It dates back to 2003. And as Tyler mentioned, it's the first time that it's been outside of the Denver metro area. So we're very excited about the Dow Junction project. I'd also like to mention that the project was brought to us by a former participant in the challenge and also a former chair of the challenge, like Morgan Landers, who's now a planning manager within Eagle County. So thank you, Morgan, for making the great recommendation to NAIOP. I'd like to recognize the project's sponsor, the Town of Minturn. And the Town of Minturn is represented today by Mayor John Weiderman, Mayor Pro Tem Earl BIDEZ, Michelle METTEER, who's the Minturn Town Manager, and Scott Hunn, Senior Planner with Eagle County. Thank you for all for attending today. I'd like to recognize again our title sponsor, Land Title Guarantee Company, for this, for their sponsorship. This wouldn't be possible. And to say a few words on behalf of Land Title Guarantee Company is Luke Davidson, Commercial Account Manager at Land Title. Luke?
Thank you, Cooper. Appreciate that introduction. On behalf of our entire organization here at Land Title, I want to thank everyone for allowing us to be the major sponsor again this year. This is our 9th out of a 10-year commitment to be the major sponsor for the Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge. So obviously we're big believers in the entire NAIOP organization, but the Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge and everything that it does for our industry, and of course the universities at DU and CU. Also want to send a thank you out to the Town of Minturn for stepping up as the project sponsor this year. As mentioned by Tyler, it's the first project outside of the metro area, so very exciting times, and I think a good time with the amount of development activity currently going on in the mountain towns and resort towns. So very, very cool of that. Also would love to give a quick shout out to all the students and instructors at the universities. As if the challenge is not difficult enough, but especially during these times with the limitations in our current work environments, having to do this virtually will just add to the adversity and skills moving forward in the real estate industry. So kudos to the students and the instructors going through it at this time. And really want to thank the entire Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge Committee. Without all the volunteers from our industry, simply put, the challenge would not exist. So that includes all the architectural resources and the judges with their valuable expertise and time, of course. So So on behalf of Land Title, good luck to all the teams and the students, and can't wait to see the exciting developments that come out of it this year. So thank you and good luck, everyone.
Thanks, Luke. Before we get started, I do want to recognize a few more people. I want to give a big thanks to our kickoff sponsor, which is Alpine Bank this year. And today Alpine is being represented by Matt Teeters and Chris ROWBERRY. Matt and Chris, thank you so much for participating in this year's challenge. I also want to recognize Brian Fisher, who is the chair of the kickoff committee. And for some unforeseen events, Brian could not be with us today, but he poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this event, and we appreciate all his efforts. So we have a great program today. I'll give you a quick overview of what the agenda is, and then I'll turn it over to our City of Minturn officials. But what we're going to do is we're going to give a quick overview of Dow Junction and let the City of Minturn give their perspective of the project and the case competition. That's going to be followed by a tour of the site and a short video that was put on by our committee. We're then going to have a good panel presentation that Brian Fisher has put together, which will be followed by some Q&A from students and other participants here today. And then at the end of our program around 4:30, we'll get back together. We will have some special guests and school faculty participate in the annual coin toss, who will decide the order of the challenge event. And then we will introduce the judges and the architectural resources for whom each group will be assigned. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor John Weiderman and the City of Minturn. If you could please unmute your mics and turn on your videos and provide a brief overview of the site.
Hello, everybody. I'm the mayor, John Weiderman. I'd just like to thank everyone for helping us through this whole process. We couldn't be more excited to be part of this challenge. So, quick overview of the site. This particular site's been eyed by, I think, a lot of people in Eagle County for a long time. It's been home to the Forest Service for many, many years. And in their pursuit to hopefully consolidate some of their offices, this has been on our radar for the last few years as a really potentially fantastic spot for development, but also meeting regional needs and goals. Certainly, some of the top tier ones that we've got are sales tax revenue generation for the town, but that certainly only comes post being able to maintain this access to the site for public use and the public betterment. So this site's been near and dear to the public for so many years, and maintaining that access is really paramount. And then being such a regional player as far as location is concerned, transit and accessibility are also going to be pretty paramount in this location going forward. And then I'd say there's a lot of other regional goals that Eagle County maintains, and certainly trying to be a player with those is going to be huge. Things like potentially childcare services, or maintaining access to the river, things like that are certainly goals of ours. But being a player with the surrounding communities in Eagle County is certainly not only in our best benefit, but everybody's. So Michelle, Earl, do you guys have anything?
Earl, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Mayor. As always, a thorough background. The only thing I could really add to that would be just to kind of give everyone an idea of what Minturn is as a town. It's one of the oldest towns in the county. We started off as a kind of the first settlements in the valley, in the Minturn Valley, was a trading post back in the 1880s. And as activity grew and the mining commercial activities began, the railroad became interested, and so they ran the rail line into town and founded the town, really. That was formally incorporated in 1904. Since I moved to our town in 1981, the population of Minturn has basically not really grown. We have, and that is because of the nature of our citizens that love this valley. They don't really want our town to change, and it really hasn't. You know, there's obviously changeover here and there, but we've maintained our small character, and we all love it. However, that is challenging from a revenue point of view, as John had mentioned. And so this is an ideal opportunity for us to perhaps come up with a unique project that provides quality revenue streams to our town, so that we don't have to exactly alter too much our old town areas. As well as, you know, it's been a transportation hub for Eagle County, and we like to enhance that and promote it as well, as the mayor had mentioned. So, but anyway, that's our background. Michelle?
Sure, if I might be able to add a few things to what you both just said. Thank you so much. Like the mayor said, there are three main goals to this project, which is sales tax revenue generation, maintaining access to the Meadow Mountain Recreation Area, which is just above the Dow Junction corridor, and keeping public transit available for the region. In addition to those primary goals for Minturn, we're also looking to be a regional partner with our surrounding communities and with the county. So items like affordable and workforce housing are things that we'll be looking at. You know, the town of Vail is a great neighbor next door, and they have quite a few needs, as well as Avon, Beaver Creek, and Minturn proper. Additionally, the mayor mentioned childcare. We have multiple options pertaining to childcare, and if childcare fits in this location, that's incredible, given its access to I-70. If sales tax revenue generation is able to be obtained through this project to allow childcare to be paid for in other areas, that's an opportunity as well. With that, I thought I'd just turn it over to Scott Hunn in case you have any additional comments about the location itself and the planning aspects.
Thanks, Michelle. Welcome, everybody. I think you guys hit every major category, but I don't think we've talked about the proximity of the site to a major interchange. It's really unique because of its proximity to Highway 6 and 24. 6 and 24 travels up to Leadville. There are a lot of people that travel into Eagle County from Lake County for work every day. So there's a lot of in-commuting that happens on Highway 24. They come through town, and then at Dowd, they either continue on Highway 6 to some of the communities down valley, Avon and Edwards and places like that, or they head over to Vail. So it's a literal confluence site. You've got the interchange with I-70. And as John mentioned, it's, you know, historically it's been the site of the administrative site for the U.S. Forest Service, and it also serves as a recreation with Meadow Mountain, a pretty popular recreation spot for folks, you know, in multiple uses too. So, from a proximity standpoint to major transportation corridors, the Eagle River, part of the site borders on the Eagle River. And so part of the challenge might be thinking about, you know, how to safely connect the main site to a smaller portion of the site, and working on enhanced access to the river, however that plays out. But again, the proximity of this site to the interchange, and then its closeness to the town of Vail and Beaver Creek Resort just down the road, I think makes it really unique. I don't know what the traffic counts are, but I think, does anyone, John or Earl or Michelle, do you know what the traffic counts are on 6 or 24? No? Not important, but there's a lot of traffic. So, you know, it's a gateway site. And, you know, when we were asked what some of the goals of this project were, as the town planner for Minturn, you know, I'm looking at this and the strategic priorities and thinking about what that actually means from a programming and a design standpoint. And this is a kind of a gateway property, and it's separated from town proper, from Old Town Minturn. But nevertheless, it very well can and should serve as a gateway element to the town of Minturn. So I think it takes on some more importance in that respect. It also is unique with its position relative to the highway platform. The highway is kind of elevated. You come around that curve in Dow Junction. And so the site kind of sits down below that. Because of that and because of the backdrop that this site has behind it, Meadow Mountain, it kind of invites some massing and modeling that might be a little taller than what we might see in Old Town proper. So I think that's all I have to add at this point.
Thank you, John, Scott, Michelle, and Earl. Great context. We have a couple minutes for Q&A. We have a question. There's mention of the wetlands near the site. Where are the wetlands located?
So Cooper, this is Michelle METTEER. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
I'm happy to help answer that question. And Jeff SPANEL, who will be joining the panelists team later on, will probably go into more depth on this. But the wetlands are located between where the current Forest Service building is located at the northern edge and the interstate. So the northernmost part of the property does have some wetlands on it. I believe, and Jeff SPANEL will be able to add to this, I believe there's also wetlands in the roundabout carousel for the transit center. So we do have a couple of wetlands in those areas. Oh, there's my video. Thank you. So primarily to the north, the northernmost section of the property where people exit the interstate and get onto the interstate is where the wetlands are located.
Thank you, Michelle. I have another question. Is there a path that connects to Beaver Creek?
So yeah, I can go and take this one. So not only is there a path that effectively goes to Beaver Creek on the road, there's going to be essentially a connecting path, hopefully, that connects Minturn to both Vail and Beaver Creek. That being said, the specific bike path up to Beaver Creek would not necessarily be in play since it's so far up on the hillside. Avon, easy access. In the summertime, though, there's a great series of trails that connect all the way up to Beaver Creek and all around. So summertime mountain biking access is spectacular. Wintertime trail access would be limited. I believe you'll still be able to get to Avon on, I believe, the bike path, but not to Vail. So wintertime access a little bit challenged, but can still certainly get around. Summertime, much better.
Thanks, John. Let's see, we got a couple more questions coming in. Were the historic mudslides on the west side of the site?
I can briefly answer that, Cooper. Yes. So historically, there are slides on the western section of the parcel. So where you can see on the screen the Dow Junction with the little yellow pin. And if you head to the north, there have historically been, I believe, and again, Jeff SPANEL can go further into detail with this, I believe there are several slide sections that will want to be addressed and acknowledged.
So we have a question. Is Minturn open to a long-term ground lease with a not-for-profit developer, or will Minturn be the general partner and owner of the development in perpetuity?
The way we have originally envisioned this occurring is Minturn partnering with a third-party developer for the purchase of this property, and at that point, the third-party developer really taking over with by coming through with a formal PUD application, and then that would enter Scott Hunn's world as our planning director, and they would then be the primary owners of the property. So we certainly were not envisioning a long-term lease of sorts. We were looking for a partner for purchasing powers to move things along with the development.
Great. And Michelle, just a piggyback on that is in terms of the exit strategy after a number of years of post-stabilization.
I think we need to take a look at some of the feasibility and what that might look like, but the town is not looking to have long-term property ownership in this area, as far as I know, and John Weiderman and the council can certainly update me on that. But we were certainly looking for a third-party developer for the purposes of the purchasing power to purchase from the Forest Service under the guise of the FESRIA Act, And from that point on, would look to then have the developer take the lead through the PUD process with Scott Hunn. So we were not looking to be long-term owners of this property.
Thank you for the clarification, Michelle. I'm going to go through just a few more questions. I know we have a lot of them coming in from the students. You will have an opportunity, students, just as a reminder, to have time to ask questions of town staff as well with your Q&A time with them. So if we don't get through all of them, don't worry, you will have an opportunity to answer those questions, but I want to make sure we keep on time here as well. So we have the next question is, what does the town of Minturn currently do with snow removal on the site?
Sure. We're fortunate right now that this site is owned and operated by the United States Forest Service. So we do not have to handle snow removal at the site currently. That being said, they do handle snow storage on site for the most part. And when things get too crowded, they do need to take snow off site for dumping purposes. Of course, as we all know, there's a lot of opportunity for snow bunking, snow storage, snow removal, and snow melting. So, you know, everything from snow dragons and the such, like the town of Vail use for melting snow on site, are things to think about, so that we're not using so much space for snow and rather using it for development purposes instead. And Scott, if you want to add to that, I know you've got some great ideas on snow as well.
I don't have much to add to that other than I was just thinking maybe like I could build it up into a big snow jump. Sorry, still humor. No, I think you covered it.
Confirm, we're not allowed to use the Meadow Mountain Recreation Area as a ski resort. Moving forward, that was part of the agreement when it was changing hands in back several decades ago. So it's not able to be a ski resort in the future.
Darn.
Good choice, Scott.
Scott, could you briefly just tell us what the current guidelines are? Not that they would necessarily apply to a PUD, but just kind of a basic overview of percentages, just so they have an idea.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. There are none. This is zoned federal land. And within that zone district, within the town, there really aren't any approved uses or development standards. It's all recommended because it's federally owned property. So the town does show this on the zoning map, but really there's no effective controls. So we are, again, looking for a PUD to come in and establish zoning, dimensional limitations, use, all that stuff.
Thank you for that clarification, everyone. Next question, is Meadow Mountain used more in general in the summer or the winter, or all year round consistently?
I mean, from an avid user myself, I would say that summertime and wintertime are about equal use. Summertime is extremely popular for mountain bikers and hikers and kayakers and rafting and the likes. And the wintertime, the skiing mostly, and certainly snowmobile use is very popular. And so, you know, it's so rare that you'll ever go by that space and not see just a ton of people using it for all sorts of reasons, summer and winter. And spring and fall, like, you know, the fall colors are incredible on that hillside. And, you know, in the springtime, it offers some pretty early outings to get outside. It's got some good sun exposure on that side, so it tends to melt off fairly quickly. So yeah, I would say pretty much all year round.
Great, thank you so much, all three of you, for that. We are going, in the essence of time, going to need to move forward with the next part of our programs.
The next part of our program is a panel discussion that'll be led by special guest Chris Romer. Chris is the president and CEO of the Vail Valley Partnership. He's going to be moderating this afternoon. Chris and panelists, please turn on your videos and unmute your mics, and I'll turn it over to Chris. Chris.
Great. Thank you so much, Cooper. I appreciate it. And it's my honor to be joined by Jeff, Chris, Scott, and Greg to talk through a variety of different things that I think will shed some light and provide some feedback to the students and the groups on a number of the things. And I was fortunate to join for a part of the Q&A that just occurred. And I think a lot of the questions we have lined up for this group will probably bring on some new questions and probably address a number of questions that everyone might have. And so Let's start, if we could, with Jeff. And Jeff, as the, and I'll introduce you guys a little bit, do a little bit of an introduction with my first question to each of you. Jeff, as the current managing partner of Wintergreen Homes, you're actively involved in numerous affordable and entry-level housing developments across the Rocky Mountain region. What best practices can you share with the group when you first began a new development project in terms of entitlements, land planning, infrastructure, budgeting, design work, construction management, et cetera, those types of things?
Well, affordable project budget is king. So, and generally there's going to be either legal or practical limitations on rent. So one needs to understand and plan for those budget and cost restraints, because particularly if it's a legal constraint, there's an upper limit on what the project can cost, and there's no opportunity to recover cost overruns through rent increases. The first thing we start with is a very thorough due diligence of the property. We need to understand the title, any encumbrances on the property, specific ownership issues, or any obligations that may have been made by a prior developer. Those can sneak up on you and be very expensive. The next step would be a meeting with the town regarding their vision, expectations, and limitations for the property. It's very important in our world to involve the town as a member of the design team so that we have their continuous input as we go forward. The design team would include not only the architect and the planner, but we also typically select a contractor at this point. We negotiate a contract rather than bidding the work out. And the purpose of having a contractor on the team when you've got a limited budget is they can provide cost estimates as we go, value engineering decisions as we go, and constructability input. You know, there's certain things that might be nice, but they're just not practical to build.
Good. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. And we're going to touch on a few of those other things, and specifically on some stuff on the site as we circle back to you. Next, Chris ROWBERRY. Chris, you have been a commercial banker in Basalt, Avon, and Vail for the past 20 years. What key factors would a lender such as Alpine Bank want to see when evaluating a ground-up construction project like the Dow Junction site? How would you get comfortable providing horizontal or vertical construction financing?
Yeah, hi, Chris. Thanks. It's great to be with you today. You know, that's a great question, and something that we look at a lot of in this valley. For us here at Alpine, I would say, as well as other banks that I've worked for, we consider development and construction financing to generally be one of the riskier types of credits that we might consider. This type of lending tends to bring in more categories of risk, if you will, than other types of loans. For example, in a development loan, we have to consider the risk that the project will actually be successfully built before we even get to the primary source of repayment, which is typically the sale or the lease up of the real estate itself. So therefore, it's very important that, like Jeff was saying, that the borrower / developer comes with the proper team in place. So when they're coming to present the financing request to the bank, we have confidence that the developer, the planner, the architect, the designer, the general contractor, and so forth all have the experience to deliver the proposed project. We've definitely seen over the years, you have an experienced developer get in over their head when they attempt to start a project that might be too large or too complex in scope. So that's definitely one of at the top of the list there. Secondly, equity is hugely important. We like to see that the developer has significant skin in the game. Developers like to use leverage, obviously, to maximize their profits on a project, and we get that, but we also need to know that they have an appropriate level of cash into the deal before the bank begins financing a project. And then lastly, for us, Alpine Bank's a community bank. We're about $5 billion in assets, so we're a big community bank. But we like to see a secondary source of repayment. So we're looking for a flesh and blood guarantor that has outside income that will be available to solve problems in the event that the project stalls, there are cost overruns. We know the eventual source of repayment is generally going to be the lease up or sale of the real estate. But from the commencement of a project to the time it's brought to market, we all know a lot of things can change over that, say two plus year period. So, and then with regard to, I think you mentioned horizontal and or vertical construction, we generally would not get involved with the horizontal part of the project unless we also like the vertical piece. We want to be in the deal kind of from soup to nuts. So it would be very rare for us to just finance one kind of phase of the project.
Great, thanks, Chris. Good, very good background and overview there. So thank you, we appreciate it. Moving on to SCOT. Scott, one of the sponsors' main goals is to utilize the project site as a catalyst for other future development surrounding the 13.3 acre site. As a consulting town planner for Minturn, what future growth and development do you envision once the Dow Junction project gets up and running? Obviously, assuming the project delivers valuable product to the market and is deemed successful.
Great, thanks, Chris. I've been thinking about this question a little bit, and the site is constrained. So, the immediate development of anything around the site, I think, is going to be limited. But as the mayor and Councilman BIDEZ pointed out, one of the main goals of this project is to generate sustainable income that's appropriate for the town and that has a lot to do with, who the town is, right? So, thinking about other things that are going on in town, the town is currently looking at 2 PUDs right in town. So there's growth and development going on in the town. There will be capital improvements that need to be made to be able to serve those developments. There's another PUD that will be coming forth probably in the next couple months that might be another 400 or 500 units. So there's a lot of growth pressure going on in and around the existing town. So I started thinking about the impact of this project, and from the revenue stream side, from capital improvements, there's regional bike and recreation path connections that need to be made from Dow Junction into town. The town has a great history of working with Eagle County and eco trails to plan and design those. And so if this becomes part of that funding mechanism for those types of improvements, that's kind of what I was thinking of. One of the main goals of this site is perhaps a transit hub. So, looking at regional transit through Eco Transit, Eagle County's transit authority, the town of Vail, again, as the mayor pointed out, regional partnerships and how important this site is from that perspective, and having this site in some fashion function as kind of a transit hub, perhaps. But then what happens when people arrive at this site and they don't necessarily need or want to get back into their car? Can they get into town some other way? So thinking about things like feeder systems, again, out of the box thinking, using that revenue stream, thinking of taxation within the development itself and paying for things. Affordable housing is a big deal anywhere in our region. And the town recently adopted its first inclusionary housing ordinance. So now new developments coming in are going to have to meet that threshold and present a housing plan. So again, thinking about how this development could have a direct impact on affordable housing, and then offsite through revenue streams, those types of things. Parks, open space, recreation. The town just completed a survey in 2020, and one of the main comments from people who love Minturn but want to see some more recreation was just recreational improvements. We now have a new bike park in town, which is really cool. This year, some folks took up building an ice rink, but as those things get more use, supporting those types of things through this development, I think, become really important.
Great, thanks, Scott. A lot to unpack there, so thanks for that.
Yep.
For that overview. There's what you leave me with there is there's a lot of potential and a lot of need for collaboration, which is a good segue to Greg Moffett. And Greg, as a long-term Vail resident, you've served as a town councilman for the town of Vail, and you currently serve as a planning commissioner for Eagle County. What are the biggest challenges and obstacles when assessing the best and highest use of such a large site like this 13.3 acre site at Dow Junction?
Chris, great question. And the answer is there's probably more opportunity than obstacle. And Scott's going to sympathize and start nodding his head pretty aggressively here when I say the first thing you do is get it out of the county and into the town. The entitlement process is cumbersome in the county. They're working with a pretty outdated set of regulations, which they're in the process of overhauling, but won't be done for a while. The town, I think, has got the right attitude about this in terms of wanting to see something done on that site. And it's probably going to be, from an entitlement standpoint, much more accommodating. The other big obstacle, I'm incredibly sympathetic to the town's objective of generating sales tax, and I've talked to Earl and Michelle about this in a couple different contexts. The challenge is although it's a highway intersection, it's a really interesting highway intersection. I don't want to say dead man's curve, but I just did. It's not super visible from either direction. The site is located well below it. And frankly, with what's going on in the retail industry nationally right now, I'm reluctant to think that you're going to be able to plop a big box store down there and start running the cash register. I tend to think it's probably a better site for something like lodging, maybe a double Marriott product play or something like that. Which will generate plenty of revenue. It will also complement the demand up and down the valley. I just, by the way, because Scott opened up a couple Pandora's boxes, let me pile in. In terms of transit hub, this site is interesting because it's where railroad tracks meet Vail, basically. And there's been talk lately about reactivating that railroad. There's plenty of interest down at the county into seeing that railroad turn into a commuter system that gets people from Minturn down to Eagle and Gypsum on the west end of the county. And if commuters were coming in on that on a daily basis, they'd have to get to work in Vail somehow. So it's where rail transit would intersect with rubber tire transit. It's intriguing on a lot of levels, but the big issue really is making sure you're in a accommodating entitlement atmosphere. How's that for being politically correct?
Greg, I've known you a long time, and that's maybe the first time I've heard you be politically correct. So congratulations, you're growing up, my friend. And I'm gonna keep this with you. And ask you another question here, and it's related to something Scott said, or alluded to at least, and Jeff talked about a little bit as well with his history. But Greg, you've been an advocate for retaining and advancing what we call community housing, workforce housing, lower middle class housing to accommodate our service sector employees within Eagle County. How would you balance this initiative with economically feasible real estate development and still creating value and profit for investors and developers?
It's a great question, and every time the site comes up, that's where we all end up going. Because of the way that the dirt's probably going to get acquired from the Forest Service, there's, I suspect, ample opportunity to buy it at a discount over straight unzoned real estate a mile and a half west of the Vail town limit. To the extent that the government's involved in purchasing it, they're going to be able to adjust the sale price to the private sector and get something in return for discounts, which is, if you look at what's happened in Vail or elsewhere in the county. But the bottom line is, and Jeff's going to start nodding his head here in a minute, you can't build workforce product, community product on land you have to pay for. End of story. We've got case after case where recently where private developers have tried to pay something for the land and then tried to either rent or sell at a level that keeps them sustainably profitable, and doesn't work. So what you're going to end up seeing, I suspect, is the town of Minturn is going to get the property at hopefully a reasonable price from the federal government, and they're going to in turn sell it with the stipulation that there's some degree of workforce housing. There's probably some degree of public other public benefit like childcare, which was mentioned a couple times. I'm going to guess that the Forest Service is going to want some kind of ranger station or visitor center on that site, and that's probably going to help offset the land cost at the outset. In other words, it all comes down to land cost. End of story. That was a very long answer for just got to figure out how to assess the land cost.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Greg. And I'm going to jump back up to Jeff. And Jeff, ask, because you've got experience in this, and I think it builds on Greg's question pretty nicely. What limitations will the Dow Junction project site present to the students as they begin formulating their development plans and strategies?
This is a difficult site. The entire mountainside behind this site is moving.
Exactly.
The entire mountain is a series of landslides. So cutting into the bottom of that hill is going to be difficult and very expensive, because cutting into the bottom of the hill is going to destabilize the mountain, and it's going to come down. The instability is due to water, the high water content in the soils on top of the bedrock. That water is manifesting itself at the toe of that slope, and there are scattered wetlands all along the toe of that slope. The wetlands that I think Michelle was referring to by the forest station are disconnected from that groundwater. They're far enough away that I don't believe that they are connected. Access is going to be a challenge. It's going to be from Highway 24. So working with CDOT for access is going to be one of the early things that you would want to look into to find out what requirements for highway widening, turn lanes, et cetera, might come up. Sanitary sewer, there is a large lift station directly across the highway from this property. That lift station serves the entire town of Minturn, and is capable of pumping the sewage back up to Vail. The sanitation district is just in the midst, and maybe be finishing up now, a large upgrade for this. But whatever is designed on this site, you're going to want to make sure that you've got gravity access to the sewer above that lift station, so that you're not having to pump sewage. Water is also going to be difficult. There is no water, domestic water, public domestic water available to the property at this time. Water is either going to have to be extended down from the town of Minturn, which is a couple of miles, or some sort of an agreement made with the Eagle River Water and Sand District to tap into their main transmission lines on the other side of I-70. And were some preliminary discussions with that. That line is an interconnect between two water districts, and serving the site from that interconnect is going to be a challenge from a water rights standpoint and from dealing with the two districts. The last challenge that I would see right off is wildlife. Meadow Mountain, on top of it being moving, Meadow Mountain is a critical elk calving ground, and I believe the Forest Service is going to try and restrict, or will restrict, access to that mountain during calving seasons. So that's all going to have to be taken into account.
Thanks, Jeff. There's a lot there, and you have good knowledge of this site. I'm gonna keep this question with you, and then we're gonna jump back to Chris and Scott to get some feedback here. But what considerations and thought processes would you recommend to the students as they begin evaluating the site and creating a vision and development plan within the context of everything you just shared, water and wildlife and challenges? What thought process and considerations would you recommend that the students keep in mind?
Well, I think the geotechnical reports for Meadow Mountain are available. Most of them I've seen have been generated from the Forest Service. The town has access to those reports. And that's going to tell you a lot about the instability. Access would be just a conversation probably with CDOT directly to find out what the requirements are going to be, or your traffic engineer is going to be able to give you a pretty good idea about that. Sanitary sewer is pretty self-explanatory. Water, I would start conversations first with the town of Minturn to find out what their plan might be to provide water service to this property, because I believe that's going to be an easier route than dealing with the water that is the interconnect that's closer to the property. And then the last thing on wildlife, I think they need a wildlife consultant to talk to them.
Great, thanks, Jeff. A lot of good information there, and a lot to unpack. Chris, let's take it up a level, away from the specifics of the site and more to the economic future of Eagle County and Minturn and the surrounding area. So Chris, in your estimation, what do you see as the development and economic future of Eagle County and the town of Minturn and the surrounding areas?
Well, it's a great question, and one that we talk about a lot, and sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong about it. If you go back and look at what we projected, a decade ago, and what's come to pass, although we're probably pretty darn close. I think other people on both the panel and with the town of Minturn have alluded to, we're Eagle County and Minturn are really in a unique position, which is both great and problematic at the same time. And that, I think, is just that people want to live here, people want to do business here. So there's this great demand for both residential and commercial real estate. But at the same time, we're very geographically limited. There's only so much room to build on. And that's just kind of due to the nature of living in a mountain valley, a river valley. So much of the available land, these types of parcels that we're discussing here today, are not readily available up and down the valley. It's kind of a unique opportunity. So, but going forward, I think that just presents a bigger and bigger challenge as we don't have much land to develop. In addition, like Greg was talking about, you have the municipalities are involved in the process, in the entitlement process. So whether it's the towns or the county, they clearly have a seat at the table, and are they going to be very choosy about the projects that they allow to move forward, and rightfully so. And then a more recent kind of factor that's arisen really just it's been going on for quite some time, but it's been exacerbated during COVID. Is just the rising cost of construction materials, and the cost of construction has gone up dramatically over the past, it's hard to imagine. It's been almost a year now, but it's been rising pretty quickly. So that's going to create another pretty big headwind for developers to come in and be able to acquire land. Like Greg said, that's a key component. But then the vertical construction, can you build something that's at a price where there's enough profit for the risk that you're taking? And that's going to be a challenge. So I guess I would sum it up by saying overall, it's going to be a pretty tricky landscape to navigate going forward.
Chris, let me lob in a quick note here for the students' benefit. There is probably appetite from the county and from Town of Vail to participate financially in this project to offset the land cost for housing. Just kind of throw that, how much anybody knows in a post-COVID environment, anybody knows. But the town has shown an appetite to spend money outside of the town, and the county is certainly in the housing game. So there's that going on too.
Yeah, and I think that's that, like you alluded to, is a necessary component to development going forward. Whenever you're bringing in that affordable housing piece to development, otherwise the numbers sometimes just do not work if you're paying retail price, if you will, for a piece of land.
Yeah, and Greg, since you brought that up, I'm gonna pose this question to you directly, and then we'll circle back to Scott. You've obviously got some knowledge of this site and some prior interest in Dow Junction based on the location and your tenure in Vail, as we talked about before. What different visions might you have for the site? Have you talked about maybe a extended stay type lodging property? You talked about a little bit of housing. What do you see as the right mix there from a housing, mixed use, commercial, other property types? What type of vision have you heard talked about, Greg?
I heard talked about not so much. I mean, it truly, if you were to put a decent sized Fairfield Spring Hill combo on that site, obviously you've got to retain access to the recreation. That's going to be critical. So whatever you're going to do is going to be vertical. The site is too well located for workforce housing not to have some. You're equidistant. You're actually closer to Vail than you are to Beaver Creek, but more or less equidistant to the two employment centers. And so, from a planning standpoint, and once again, I suspect Scott will nod his head on this. You're remiss if you're not factoring in something. Do you want to put a super dense apartment building, or do you want to do some combination of for rent and for sale? That's for smarter people than me. But you definitely want to see some housing there. If you get the density to a certain level, I think it'll support some retail. I don't think it's going to support a bunch of destination retail. And on the riverside, you've got recreation potential, you've got transit potential. It's the riverside of that site is got the potential to be really beautiful and probably recreation oriented.
Thanks, Greg. And Scott, that's a perfect loop in, not just because Greg mentioned it to you, but because I think it's right up your alley. And I think it's important for the students to have this knowledge. With you've got a solid pulse on the town and the area. What immediate development needs are the citizens of Minturn and Eagle County as a whole looking for from this site?
Well, I think I agree with what's been said already. I think there's got to be a housing component. The town obviously is interested in, and has been looking at this site with 2 or 3 main goals in mind for years, which, is revenue generation, most likely through some kind of lodging tax in a lodging situation. The other ideas I think I've kind of gravitated towards is, how does this site differentiate itself from other offerings in the town of Vail or further down valley in the town of Avon or Beaver Creek Resort? And, what's the out of the box thinking that the town is going to get through this process? I think that's really what we're after. As the town has, worked with potential developers and done RFPs for this site before, again, it was, revenue generation, lodging, possibly a transit component, maintaining access to Meadow Mountain. But what other ideas are out there that help differentiate this site from other places in the valley? Is it arts and culture? Is it an outdoor venue for concerts and things like that? It's a pretty spectacular backdrop, depending on how you develop the site and how you deal with the highway noise, things like that. Greg mentioned recreation and how this site the boundaries of this property on the other side of 24 are right on the river, right? And in the past, the town has hosted some whitewater events on the Eagle River in that same stretch. So how do you leverage what's going on regionally from a recreation standpoint and all the different user groups that are out there? That's something we haven't talked about, is the rafting, kayaking, mountain biking, and how this site may serve as a hub for those folks too. But I trust Chris and Greg on this front as far as the pulse of the larger community. That I'm also involved in housing and the housing task force. So, my mind immediately goes to that, but I'm trying to make sure that we don't lose sight of the town's primary goals for this site, which is really capturing that interstate proximity and visibility. Obviously there's a lot of challenges, but that's why I alluded to the fact that this site, of all the sites within the town of Minturn, lends itself to some additional density, intensity of use, and height, depending on some of those other constraints. Those are going to be a real challenge, and the impacts on local wildlife definitely need to take those into consideration. So once again, a lot to unpack. I'm sorry. That's really one of the things we wanted out of this, or, if we had a developer come in, was being able to have some different perspectives, looking at our local real estate market and some of the challenges that might be unique to our valley from a cost standpoint, but also looking at what the market is calling for, and having that kind of regional analysis on the market is really what the town needs to validate some of the things that it's put out there as goals and how viable they are.
Yeah, good. And Scott, let's keep it with you. And we've got a few minutes left. So I want to hit each of you with one more question, and let's try and keep it tight so we can get to everybody. But Scott, I think this is going to be important for the students. What obstacles and challenges might the students face as they begin formulating their development plan, specifically in terms of working with city planners, local officials, citizens, business, et cetera?
Well, since I'm the town consulting planner, they shouldn't have any problem getting a hold of me. I think everyone in the town is
There'll be no
arms.
problem with the town of Minturn, with Scott.
No.
Right?
So we're going to put Scott's cell phone number up in a minute.
Yeah.
By all means, no, it's an open arms situation right now. Again, the town is just thrilled to be part of this. And I'm really thrilled to be able to be, consulting on behalf of the town on this project, but, looking more long-term. The town's about to launch into an update of its community plan, thinking long-term about, growth in the town. So it's a great time to be doing stuff like this and envisioning one of the most critical components to the town's future at Dow Junction. So our phone numbers are going to be available. We'll make ourselves available. And I think there's several check-ins that we're going to be taking part in. So I don't foresee obstacles working with the town and the town staff. We've got a public works director who will make himself available. If there are contacts that we can help with regard to regional contacts at CDOT, Eagle River Water and Sanitation District, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I just got off a phone call with the regional officer there today. So, there's I think it's all eyes are on this project right now. I don't know if that answers your question, Chris. But.
No, I think so. I noticed you didn't talk about the neighbor part, but maybe that's okay, because unlike a lot of projects that get talked about in Eagle County and the Vail Valley, there's not necessarily direct neighbors here. But if you have a quick thought in terms of the reception that you expect the citizens might have to some type of development on this spot, I think that would be helpful. And then we're going to run over to Jeff and Chris.
Okay, I'll keep it quick. So, we've talked about it. I think the town's been looking at this site for a long time, and the community survey, some of the responses this last year that the town got from that acknowledged the fact that Dowd is the site where the town could actually do something like this. So I think there's going to be general support from citizens of the town of Minturn. Michelle pointed out in the video and in her comments that, this is a recreational site, Meadow Mountain, that is used by everybody and has special meaning to a lot of people in the larger valley. So, of any of the challenges, that might be the place where we see and hear concerns from the access standpoint, making sure that access is maintained, and then impacts on wildlife.
Thanks, Scott. And Jeff, you are working on a new 132 unit affordable apartment project. What can you share with the group about this project specifically, and what are some takeaways that the students might have and might be able to apply when they start assessing and planning the Dow Junction site?
Well, it's actually a 282 unit project. Phase
one, yeah.
Yeah. The first 150 units were completed in December, and they're fully occupied at this point. To go with Chris's concern about costs, what we ran into with this project was the first phase of 150 units was financed through a low-income tax credit program. It required many stakeholders in this thing. DOLA was involved, Chaffa was involved, Town of Gypsum was involved, Eagle County was involved, and they're all financial stakeholders in the project. So financing, I would have to say, this has been the most difficult financing project of my career. And I've done thousands of units across the Rocky Mountains that are both affordable and entry-level housing. To go with the cost standpoint, we ran into two big cost obstacles for this project: labor force and materials. One of the new trends in building apartments, motels or hotels, and assisted living facilities is there are modular manufacturers out there that do nothing but build large buildings like this. So a 30-unit building is cut into 24 modules. 2 modules make up a floor, and there were 3 pods in our buildings. Then the site contractor was building at the same time the modules are being manufactured. In this case, in Boise, Idaho, the site contractor was busy building foundations, making utility connections, and he actually built the roofs for the building on the foundations so that they were ready. They served 2 functions because phase 1 was built over the winter. We built the roofs on the foundations to provide weather protection for the foundations. And then when the modules showed up, these modules weighed close to 50,000 pounds each. So it took a 450-ton crane to take them off the trucks and set them in place. It was very fast. In 6 days, the building was erected to the roof. Each building was on the roof. And then it took several months after that to finish tying them together and completing them. But the entire, from when we started setting boxes to when we had people move into the last units, only took 5 months. Phase 2 is a more conventionally financed project. We're closing on the loan Monday, and the factory construction starts on Monday. So that's kind of why I've been so busy leading up to this.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And that's an exciting project for Eagle County, and we're happy that you guys worked through the different challenges that existed. You said it was the most complicated you've had, and we're thankful for you and the team there to see that through the finish line. So last question before we get to the Q&A. Chris ROWBERRY, if you would. You talked about this a little bit, or alluded to it anyway. But can you give an example of how a bank in which you or the lender partnered with a developer to help navigate a complex project like this. You talked earlier about some of the risks when financing a project, but you've got a lot of variables here with speculative product, possibly affordable housing, mixed use, timing and delivery uncertainty. Any insights you would share with the students? And then we'll get to the Q&A.
Yeah, I think kind of bringing it full circle to what my first question is you're really looking at the players and stakeholders involved in a project to bring it all together. One particular project that comes to mind, unfortunately it's not in our valley, was over in Aspen, was Obermeyer Place. This was constructed, I want to say about 15 years ago, and I think of that one because it encompassed all the components in your question. With had mixed use, it had affordable housing, had a speculative component. It also had a large degree of public-private partnership in that Aspen-Pitkin County Housing Authority was involved. The city of Aspen, obviously, it had to get through Pitkin County. I think they started, this is Klaus Obermeyer, the Obermeyer ski gear and famous skier. So this was a legacy project for him. So he wanted to do something with his name on it to leave behind in Aspen and give back to the community with a pretty significant affordable housing component to it. So that one comes to mind as one that was years in the making, and then the right team came together. There was an extensive project management team. R.A. Nelson was the developer on it, who certainly had I spoke to this earlier, they were the general contractor. You need that GC that has the experience of building something of that scope. It was a 2-acre parcel. I want to say 70 million or so was the project cost. And keep in mind that's in 2005 dollars. So it was a pretty big project. But I always look back at that one as one where you had all these people kind of coming together to get it done. And it goes to show you, if you have the right project and the right team, you can get things done, even if it takes a while to do it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think that's a good example. I'm going to look at the Q&A now. If folks have questions for the panelists, please submit those using the Q&A, and I'll be running through those, and we'll have some folks keeping an eye as well in case I miss anything. The first question for the panel, and I'll open this to any of you guys, but do you have any advice? We talked about this a little bit in a lot of different ways, but direct advice for balancing all of these uses: sales tax generation, housing, parking, et cetera, transit, recreation. How do you balance those uses with the need for parking them and having adequate parking to support current recreation use? So let me rephrase, as you guys think. How do you balance the need for recreation and current use and parking with the future development of the site to have the sales tax generation, housing, et cetera, other needs? We could call it MOFFET Place and have Greg donate a whole bunch of money like Klaus did, so he has a legacy issue.
Yeah, Chris, the parking's the conundrum on the Upper Valley, obviously. And once again, for the students' benefit, if you want to build a parking space in Vail, it's almost certainly got to be in a structure, and it's going to cost you about $250,000 a space. So it can't be much less expensive here. And the site's tight enough so that if you're going to park any kind of significant requirement, you're going to end up having to do it vertically, which is just plain expensive, and you hate to waste land to do that. There's a part of me that says deliberately underpark the crap out of it and force people to find another way to get there. I use Maroon Bells as kind of an example. I don't care how big your hedge fund is, you can't drive to Maroon Bells. You've got to get on a bus to get up there. And maybe we come up with a way to find less expensive parking someplace else, less deer parking, as it were, and get people to commute in on some kind of public transportation. Assuming we've got a transportation hub there, that might even work.
Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Well, I'm nodding my head, but I think Greg's on the right track. That's, part of this out of the box thinking that I think the town is looking for. The town obviously has its parking standards, but this site might be one of the places where that standard through a PUD process becomes varied. And
Well, Scott, what if you basically pushed people into town to park, so they had to start their day and end their day right in front of the retail in town? I just think, once again, thinking out loud, right?
Well, yeah, but the town will be doing a parking study here pretty soon. Some people think there's a parking problem in town, and some people are not so convinced. But I think the takeaway for me would be the connection between this site and town through public transit, right? And some synergy there. If it's a gateway to get people to this site, if it's not a retail destination, then they obviously, or the other option is to have them easily get back into town, right? And check out Minturn, right? And vice versa.
Yeah, and Scott, there's one more question in the chat, and I'll remind you as you go through the parking. A friend of mine, and Greg knows where I'm going with this, I expect, but a friend of mine often has been known to say to town councils and different boards that you don't have a parking problem when you have too many people coming to park. You have a parking problem when your parking spaces are completely empty, because then you don't have any customers. So just as a reminder there of what our problems might be. But there's a question in there, and it's a direct question, probably best suited for Scott. You've mentioned, many of us have mentioned the access to open space and recreation. Is there a required parking for this use in addition to whatever development occurs?
Actually, I'm not sure if I can answer that. I don't know if there's a prior agreement that specifies a minimum number of spaces. Michelle might be able to answer that. But before she does, I'm going to go back to the last one, and how do you balance? And my thought was you prioritize, and that might be a process of working with town staff through this initial phase of kind of understanding the project and some of the constraints. But if it's starting with that access in mind and the parking requirements and building around that might be the way to go. But I don't know, Michelle, Mayor, Earl, do you have any idea if there's a minimum number of parking spaces that have to remain at this trailhead?
Scott, we're approaching this as a planned unit development, and so that would be a design issue. And I believe we would take that in consideration in the negotiations with the developer. So at this time, I don't see any current town regs that would be applied at this point.
So there's no agreement with the Forest Service that once they dispose of the site, there's got to be a minimum number of spaces for that public access?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Okay.
With that said, and trying to keep my head from exploding with parking, I would encourage the students not to let the tail wag the dog. What happens up here frequently is that the parking requirement ends up dictating density. Use your imaginations. Don't go at it from that angle.
Thanks for adding that, Greg. I was going to say something very similar, and do what's the highest and best use and what makes the most sense. And that will come through as Earl and Scott indicated through the planned unit development.
And it's all going to be moot once we have self-driving cars anyway.
That's right. That's right. With that, I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, and I know we're running on time. I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing their time and their expertise. And based on my run of show, I believe I'm going to hand it right back to Cooper.
Yeah, Chris, thank you. Great panel, and thank you to all the panelists who have committed an hour of their time today to speak with us. Great insight. I really appreciate it. For those just joining, I am Cooper Williams. I'm the 2021 chair of the Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge, the 19th annual challenge that's featuring Dow Junction. Want to give a quick a few quick announcements and give some recognition, and then we'll dive into the rest of our program. The rest of our program will consist of announcing the judges, which will be followed by the coin toss to determine the order of team presentations on challenge night. And then we will assign our architectural resources to the students here shortly. And we should be convening around 5 p.m., at which point the students will have a chance to meet with their architectural resources, and the town and city of Minturn will have the chance to meet with the judges and kind of give their overview of the project. So I want to give a few quick pieces of recognition. Again, thank you to Land Title Guarantee Company for being the major event sponsor. This is the 9th year of a 10-year commitment from Land Title. And Land Title is one of the key ingredients to the success of NAIOP and the Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge. So, Luke Davidson and John Freire, if you're listening, thank you so much for your continued support. Would also like to re-thank the Town of Minturn, Mayor John Weiderman, Mayor Pro Tem Earl BIDEZ, Town Planner Michelle METTEER, and Senior Planner Scott Hunn have spent a tremendous amount of time on case studies and video presentations, and it's taken a lot of effort to put this program together. So thank you again. I do want to mention a few additional sponsors of the challenge. I want to thank the Opus Development Group and the Opus Foundation, specifically Sean Cummings, who's in attendance tonight. They are the scholarship sponsor for the event. And also want to give a shout out to Brubaco Capital Partners, who again will participate as the supporting sponsor of the challenge, and will hopefully be hosting an in-person like after party event that they've historically done in the past. So thank you again to Chad Brew, Jeff Bockel, and NAIOP board member Dan Metzger. Want to turn the mic over to a good friend of mine, Matt Teeters, who's a regional president of Alpine Bank. And Alpine Bank is the kickoff sponsor for this year's event, and really appreciate the support, Matt. So we'd like to turn it over to you to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Cooper. And thank you to the entire NAIOP team for the opportunity to participate. Really enjoyed the panel discussion and learning more about the history of Minturn. For a quick plug on Alpine Bank. So I'm Matt Teeters. I am the regional president for the Denver market for Alpine Bank. Alpine was founded in Carbondale in 1973. And we're still only a Colorado bank. We are privately held and employee owned, and now have 40 locations across the state. So when we started talking about this project, we thought it was a really good alignment with Alpine Bank, given that the bank was founded in the mountains and still has a heavy presence on the western slope, but is now also in Denver and recognizes the really good work that NAIOP does in the Denver community. So, and then on a personal level, I thought this was a really unique challenge. I started my career in the Vail Valley and worked in Avon for 8 years, and knew this site really well from a recreational standpoint. Meadow Mountain is one of my favorite recreational spots in Colorado, and then loved the unique history to Minturn, and find this is a really fascinating parcel, given the history that's a little bit distinct from the ski industry on the western slope between Vail and Beaver Creek, and the ability to highlight a couple of different features, as well as the history with the 10th Mountain Division on Meadow Mountain. So I think it's a really cool project to be a part of, and really look forward to seeing some of the responses from the students as they move forward. So Cooper, and to the NAIOP team, thank you again for the opportunity to participate.
And thanks, Matt. Would also like to recognize a few special guests and NAIOP board members who are in attendance today. NAIOP President Tyler Carlson with Evergreen Development, and Kathy Barsner, the Executive Director of NAIOP Colorado. I'm going to give a quick announcement of the judges for this year's event, but before I do, want to give a big thanks to Katie Benefield at CBRE and Nikki Erbely at Lend-Lease for co-chairing the judges committee. And for you students listening, fate of winning or losing is in the hands of these select judges that are in attendance tonight. And judges, I can't thank you enough for participating in this year's event. So the judges will include Pedros Campos, Zarin Associates, Amy Cara of East West, Greg Gastineau from Urban Development Company, Patrick Scalin, Fortis Capital, Heather Sika from First Bank, Mark Siddell, Gart Properties, and Celeste Tanner from Confluent Development. For you students, the judges' bios can be found on NAIOP's website. And judges, thank you again. Immediately preceding this event, we'll have you meet with Katie and Nikki to get some instructions and kind of outlay the process for what's to come this semester. We would like to do our virtual coin toss, which is a fun part of the event. So we'd like to introduce some key faculty from both the University of Colorado and the University of Denver. From CU, Sebastian Cordino, who's an adjunct professor at the University of Colorado Real Estate Center and executive director of the Archway Housing and Services, and Drew Mueller, assistant professor of the University of Denver Burns School of Real Estate and Construction. I'll turn it over to Sebastian first to say a few words.
Okay, thanks, Cooper. It's nice to see you. Just really want to express my gratitude to NAIOP, the organizers of this event, the sponsors, and all the judges associated with it. It's a fantastic event, and CU and our students and faculty are really pleased to be a part of it again. And I also want to say thank you to the Town of Minturn. We know you're going to get a lot out of this, but you're also giving a lot, and that's a great contribution to the students' experience at CU and DU. And then thank you to DU, Drew, and your gang over there. We look forward to working through this process with you and seeing you in the competition.
Thanks, Sebastian. I'll echo what Sebastian said. Thank you to the sponsor. I think it's really fun to do one of these competitions up in the mountains for the first time. I think it'll be a really interesting experience for all of the students and the entire NAIOP community. And I echo all of the thanks as well that Sebastian threw out there. The entire NAIOP community for donating your time to helping all of the students get the information they need to make a incredible development proposal, and the Town of Minturn for being willing to put up this site and to help the students come up with a great project idea. So thank you to everyone who's involved with this amazing experience for everyone involved.
Yeah, thank you, Drew and Sebastian. We look forward to seeing the student cases. I'd like to ask that the two of you stay on, and I'm going to invite John Weiderman up and turn the mic over to Kathy and Stacy, who are going to conduct our virtual coin toss.
Well, hello everybody, and it's been a great afternoon. So I want to just tell everybody the purpose of the coin toss is to determine the order of presentation on challenge day, both to the judges and to the audience. So when we do the coin toss, on our virtual coin, one side of it is CU and one side of it is DU, and Stacy, so you can see here, Stacy will be ready to flip it here in just a second, and whoever comes up, that school has the choice if they want to present first in front of the judges, or and if they choose to present first in front of the judges, then they present second to the audience at the challenge. Without further ado, if everybody's ready, we'll do a virtual drum roll, and Stacy, go ahead and toss the coin. And CU gets to make the selection. Sebastian?
Okay. So we will go first to judges.
Okay. All right, we will get that down. Cooper, are you going to hop back on to introduce our next section?
Yes, thank you, Kathy. I'd like to turn over the video to Brian Cohen, who is chairing the Architectural Resources Committee, and have him announce the architectural resources firms and assignments. Brian?
Thank you, Cooper. Good afternoon. This year we have a great group of architectural resources, and they're excited to be part of the challenge again this year. like to recognize my fellow Architectural Resource Committee co-chair, J.D. Prager, for his assistance in securing this year's architectural resources. And a special mention to Dan Metzger, who also helped out this year. The 2021 architectural resources, as listed on the screen, are Anderson Mason Dale Architects, Kephart, Oz, Stantec, Studio Architecture, and Tribe Architects. Thank you to all the resources for donating your time and energy to this year's challenge. It is very much appreciated, especially in this year challenging circumstances. For this year's competition, CU will have 4 teams and DU will have 2 teams. So we will have 6 virtual envelopes containing the architectural resources names. We ask that all student competitors from CU and DU turn on their videos for the AR assignments.
While they're all moving over, I might just hop in here and say that this wheel that you're looking at is actually a virtual wheel. And in a couple of moments, we're going to spin that wheel. The AR firm names have been randomly sealed into our virtual envelopes, numbered 1 through 6. And so we'll spin the wheel and determine, so the first team that it lands on will get envelope number 1, I believe.
That is correct, Kathy.
Yep.
Okay, so Stacy, do you want to hop on and take over this wheel spinning?
Jama's going to spin that wheel, Kathy. So what's going to happen is we're going to spin the wheel, and the first person that comes up gets choice number 1 of the architectural resources. So Jama, are you ready to spin the wheel for the first team? Here we go. And again, this gets architectural resource number 1. So that is CU Team 1. And CU Team 1 is assigned to Kephart.
Now, we don't have a way to remove CU Team 1 from our wheel. So if they come up again, we'll just respin like that. She was just showing us how they come up again.
CU Team 3 has architectural resource number 2. Studio Architecture. DU Team Cold gets architectural resource number 3. Anderson Mason Dale. CU Team 4 gets architectural resource number 4. Triba. Okay, so DU Crimson has architect number 5, which is Stantec, correct, Jama?
Correct.
Thank you. And then finally, we have CU Team 2, which will be getting architect number 6, Oz.
Thank you, Jama and Stacy. And with that, we conclude the AR assignments, and I'll turn it back over to Cooper Williams.
Thank you, Brian. We're really excited, everybody, and thanks again for attending today and participating in the 2021 Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge, which is Dow Junction. I want to give a thanks again to our sponsors, Land Title Guarantee Company, the Town of Minturn, and Alpine Bank for hosting today. I would encourage everyone to mark their calendars for the actual event. The live challenge will be on April 29th. We are planning on a hybrid event to have some sort of in-person and virtual competition. So please mark your calendars. I'm not much of a social media guy, but you can follow us through hashtag RMREC21. And with that, have a great evening. We really appreciate all your time and effort and support with this. And just a reminder for the students, they can meet with their architectural resources in their separate link. The same with the judges can meet with the city of Minturn or town of Minturn, and also Katie Benefield and Nikki Erbley. So thank you so much for your time and efforts today.